together. How did they not quit, particularly in a market that you know is quite hot? And secondly, what did you do to market?
Can you expand on the second question?
Just your marketing strategy. How did you get your sales? Did you call yourself? Did you get people in your team to call?
Sure. So I think the first question is interesting. So, while we are doing this fundraising, and it was very important to be super transparent with the team. So I think because transparency builds trust. I mean, if there's anything to build trust, that's transparency. So a lot of my engineering team would know that, hey, tomorrow we're meeting whatever Sequoia, and next week we're meeting NEA, and we'll exactly tell them what exactly happened in the meeting and why they said no to us, and what we need to improve. So actually, some of the guys, the junior guys who've not gone through that, they actually loved the experience because they would never get that experience unless they do their own startup. So a lot of these guys are very excited. And like some folks would give me great advice, like hey, how about pitching like this, or how about packaging like this? And people will come with some crazy random ideas. But I think it's really, if I have to boil it down to one thing, I think it's purely transparency. And then with that trust, they also build that loyalty, and they feel like we are in a war because the environment in the first 1 year is like them versus us. It's like, we're not going out to the customer yet. So it's really VCs versus entrepreneur. And they're like, like VCs are our adversaries because they are just, poking holes. From a people mindset standpoint, not for me, because I've done venture-backed startup before. So to me, every VC objection and every no was a good experience because it's just learning that, okay, all right, some guy doesn't, either they don't get it, and I don't have to sweat too much about it, because they are crazy about all this market size and all that stuff. And B is that they might have some fair interesting thing to learn. But at least the good thing is that I try to make good use out of every VC meeting was to go and get another introduction from that guy. So the third VC will connect me to the fourth VC, and then that's how you build a chain of 50 VCs. The second question on how to marketing, I think that in a startup the CEO has to be a very solid sales marketing guy. Besides a good product understanding, and then technology grounded. Technology grounding is very important in a technology business. I think there's a lot of failed stories about technology companies led by CEOs who are not from technology background, and they've failed. Like Yahoo brought Terry Samuel, who was not a technology background, he was a failure. Apple brought, in back those days from Pepsi, and he was not a technology background, so he was a failure. So I think having an engineering and a technology background is very critical for any CEO to run a technology business. I'm sure there might be some exceptions. There might be some super smart non-technology guys who are running some big technology business. I'm not sure about that. That's one thing. But second thing is that the CEO has to be the evangelist. And so if the founding team doesn't have a CEO who is like a super evangelist, it's not going to go further. So they have to find or hire or bring into the founding team and then make that guy the CEO because they have to be the face of the. So I had to go out and somehow get myself into speaking at the gaming conferences and the payment industry conferences, and somehow get into the speaking through whatever connections and all that stuff, and then go out and make all this the talk big about how big the virtual economy is growing and why this new technology is needed and things like that. You have to be that visionary face to the industry. And then keep evangelizing that, and then that's where we found our first customer. So obviously the tier. So generally, again, the tier 1 is very hard to crack into, but we got almost like someone who was at the edge of tier 1 and tier 2. So a good enough brand name that can be leveraged and referenced like hell. And we were able to grab that person, and I was able to do a CEO. And the first few deals are always a CEO to CEO deals. It's not like, it's a startup, like, you can't have a VP of sales who's going to bring you business. That's a big company thing. So the CEO has to bring the first 5, customer. And it is generally a CEO to CEO deal where you sit down with the CEO, because you have more of a vision to sell and less of a product, and your vision is only going to be bought by another CEO, not his VP of something. He's not going to buy a vision. He's going to get fired if he buys a product or service from a company that is selling a vision and not a product. So that is very critical. And then so the marketing was mainly, we leveraged the first few customers, the CEO relationships with other CEOs, and then we also built a lot of thought leadership around that industry. So we were very visible in pretty much any forum in that category. So being looked upon as a market expert. And the other thing that we did very much similar to actually learn from AdMob. By the way, AdMob got into the big radar of Google mainly because they were publishing every 2 months the data. So we picked up that practice where even though how much very little transaction volume that we were doing, but we would publish the data about what we're doing because everyone's interested in the data, right? No one likes, at some point, no one likes the fluff and the marketing and your product and your features and your value proposition. That's not going to sell because it's all going to look like salesy. So, but the only thing that's still going to make you very credible, very likable by the industry, by the customer is data. So we would take all our data and then come up with all the slicing, dicing, and tell the industry that look, what are the trends based on our data, and that automatically creates the mind share because before you get the market share, you got to get the mind share of the people, and the way to get the mind share is that they have to feel that you are the expert in that space, and the best way to be looked upon as an expert in the space is that you got the data at your fingertips and you're willing to share it.
Hi.
You touched on the IT. You touched on the IT issue. And why can't a big company, right, reverse engineer your product, instead of buying and evaluation of the market?
Sure. So I think we faced that situation. In fact, in the third year of the business, when we were like growing like rocket ship, getting more and more deals and transaction volumes and all that. I won't name the name because of the confidentiality and all that stuff, but very well-known company. They engage with us on the pretext of partnership. Oh, we want to partner with you, or maybe we want to buy you. And then they get into the meetings, and really the ulterior motive is to bring all a bunch of engineers in the room. They make you do the dog and pony show for like 8 hours straight in the conference room, ask you all the tough, all the detailed questions, and they try to reverse engineer. So, and we heard from the back channel that there is an active project going on to do exactly like PlacePad. We want to have a digital goods in-app monetization platform, and we want to have the virtual currency platform. And as soon as we heard that, we obviously stopped, communicating. We didn't went around doing any kind of legal action, things like that, because we had this strong belief, even though I had pretty strong NDAs and all kinds of documentation and evidence that we shared all kinds of trade secrets and a lot of our IP. The whole point was that even though if they learn everything that we do, and if they throw even 2x the engineers that we have, they're not going to out-execute us because we had this very strong execution machine to build and keep coming up with the next releases. So it's just a matter of running fast, and they could have absolutely launched it. They, by the way, launched it too. So our deal got done in March. So last October, that competitor, this large 800-pound gorilla company, they actually launched the product. It looked so bad. It was nowhere in comparison to our product. It was like at least 50% inferior in terms of the product performance and the features and just the user experience and all of that stuff. So yeah, they could have done and reverse engineered. But the other thing is that the question about why would they acquire and not buy? But I think I think the big companies, they buy small companies not just for the technology or the product. It's really for the team, because they know that the only way to bring that small company agile culture and that hungry culture is you want those people who work there and who's built something, because the people that generally large companies have who are there for a long time, they want to go for the football game at 6 p.m. or whatever, like they're enjoying life. No offense to them, by the way, they earned it because they have a job in a big company. I'm sure there are a lot of other small, there are a lot of people inside big companies who are doing some great stuff. But I think they really value out of the team, and as much as you can show the strength of your team, technology is really not the big factor, but again, market traction. So over the last 3 years, we had built so much market traction that they know that, even if they reverse engineer the product, it's going to take them another year and a half to catch up and build that market traction. And by that time, we would have, and also there's a competitive pressure, because if they don't buy it, their competitor will buy it.
Hi.
First, actually, just the protocol. So we have 2 mic runners on both sides.
We have 3.
Just wait for a mic to appear in your face, and then you can fire the question.
Okay.
Another half an hour, right? Good.
So I think I got the mic right. So Karl, first of all, thanks for sharing your insight. It was very useful. Is that loud enough?
Yeah.
Okay. My question is around the agile methodology that you were mentioning. So one philosophy behind agile development is to get continuous customer feedback as you build your product. Given that you solidified building the product before getting and showing it to your customers, I'm just wondering how you were able to kind of build a product that your customer really wanted. So in other words, did you have any other way of getting customer feedback loop into your product development process?
Well, so the first release of the product was really built by not listening to the customer. So by the way, that's another very, very counterintuitive philosophy. Because yeah, the B schools will teach you listen to your customer and the voice of the customer and all that stuff. The first 12 months, I had to kind of impose a dictatorship in the company by saying that, you know what, I don't want this multiple different views and this customer needs this and that customer needs this, because we'll never have a product, because we'll be like pulled in this 5 different directions. So we sat down and we talked to ourselves saying that, okay, this is what we think the market needs. This is our assumption, this is our hypothesis. But we really think that we as a consumer, this is how, user will benefit, this is how merchant will benefit. Now let's go and freaking build it. Okay? Because now let's not take too many opinions here, because we'll never get anywhere. A lot of these big companies can't execute because there are too many VPs, SVPs, everybody throwing opinion, you can't get anywhere, or a lot of customer feedback. So it was really exactly the opposite of not listening to the customer. And then that whole philosophy of listening to the customer comes after release 1. And then course correction and adjusting to, okay, this hypothesis was wrong, okay, maybe we do this adjustment here, that adjustment here. But if you try to just keep listening to, and you don't have your own core beliefs and faith in what exactly the market wants, you can never have like a really good product. And also learned a little bit, I've been observing Apple, and Apple is a classic example of doing that. Means, Steve Jobs probably against all kinds of, these focus groups and the traditional stuff. So yeah, but the agile, agile is, again, I think people misunderstand agile and Scrum, is a very easily thrown around words in product development and software development. But I think a lot of time people misunderstand. Agile is not about, constantly just listening and constantly making changes. It does allow you to be agile and, like do releases every week, or even release every other day, but it doesn't mean that you do like sloppy job on the quality. Right? And it also means that, it doesn't tell you that you have to listen to every single feedback of the customer.
Karl, 2 questions. How did you gain the subject matter expertise in this area? And the second question is, how much did you have to invest before you started breaking even? Would you mind sharing that with us?
So, subject matter expertise, we needed subject matter expertise in kind of 2 areas. One was the horizontal platform, which is transaction systems, online, mobile, whatever the transaction is. And so understanding the interchain, how the networks connect and things like that, and how the payment works in terms of, auth and capture and all of that. The other was like each vertical, because again, we're going to adapt to a social network and an application, things like that. I think that is something that we learned mainly by obviously hiring the right people. So we hired people initially, from there's a couple of people from PayPal that we hired, which is probably the most kind of closest company of what we were doing. We also hired initially 1 or 2 people from the game vertical to bring that expertise, that how that industry works. So the initial hires were very important. That they kind of cover the weakness. That means we had the strength of having the strong understanding of what product is needed and which market to focus on. But we complemented that with the right people. Sorry, what was the second question?
How much did you have to invest? You did take VC funding initially.
Initially, yeah. So it was a low burn rate, and so we had about 4 people here, and we had about 10 to 12 people initially in India. I went to India, set up a placement India Private Limited. That is also a long story, but the main insights there is that I did try a lot of consulting routes. By the way, I can tell you definitively that consulting doesn't work. When when you're doing a startup product development, none of this Wipros or Infosys or any of this consulting companies ever work for your product development. You have to hire your own engineers, and you got to build it by yourself. So I think having early on, the first company actually, even before maybe in the same time starting PlacePan Inc., set up, flew down to Bombay and set up the PlacePan India company, and having those engineers really helped me because very low cost, so it wasn't much of a burn rate.
Hi, Karl. Question on bootstrapping. I mean, you mentioned that if you can delay it, don't take the funding.
Yeah.
But for a first-time entrepreneur who might be looking to quit a job and start something, would you still recommend the bootstrapping approach? And and when you do that, when do you know when to sort of pivot or figure out that your idea is not working? And in your case, it seemed like it was a second or third venture before that you did this. Did you do the same bootstrapping approach in the first venture as well?
Yeah, so no matter how little money that you can invest of your own, I think it's totally worthwhile to invest your own money. It will definitely give you the connection, the conviction, the bonding, and also help you to kind of think without pressure. Because as soon as you take someone's money, they're gonna have their opinion. You're gonna listen to them because they're giving you the money, and you don't want you don't want to get clouded by their opinion because they're thinking purely as someone who's putting the money in the company. They don't have the same inspiration and the conviction. They're not living your business. They're not living your company. So, you can give a lot of respect to those investors, but you don't have to listen to them. And as much as you can delay it, you will be in full control of your own, thinking. So that's the main reason why you want to delay the funding. And if you can take money from your friends, family, and borrow the money, I think that's still a better route than going out and taking the VC money. And then even at some point, some angel money is better sometimes than, depending on what business you are in, because sometimes, angels are someone who has gone through the same pain and lived through the whole, experience. So they are likely to be more supportive and they will give you the right advice as opposed to VCs will write you a big check, but then they will also expect you to go in a certain direction and certain growth and velocity, which I don't really subscribe to the fact that, you have to inject these artificial hormones of growth in a company. Initially, you have to allow the baby, rather than giving a lot of hormonal growth injections, you will allow the baby to kind of grow in its own way and figure out, to naturally grow. And that's, some VCs maybe maybe different, but I think in general I've seen that, the moment you have the VC money, then you have the first, every month you have the board meeting, and then you have to do all the drill, and they're gonna, even if you have zero revenue, you need to have a slide on revenue, and that's gonna put pressure on you. Okay, so why there is zero revenue? Okay, so it's like revenue, and you can get a lot of those short-sighted VCs.
But without the
Without a backing of a VC, how do you talked about talent acquisition, how do you go about getting the best talent out there if you're just bootstrapping?
So I think the Silicon Valley magic works here from, and one is the equity sharing, because that's why people join at an early stage. But you would generally attract people at the early stage who are not currently working just for salary. So I hired, unlike hiring the 20-something guy who doesn't need money, is out of college and he wants to do, I hired people who were like 35, 40-something guys who had already made money, or they're not working for a salary. So it was a less pressure situation from a family or something standpoint, and you can trade more, stock versus cash. But I'm sure those are the two extremes. Either you hire guys who are right out of college and they are not working for just salary, they just want to have a great experience and they're willing to get equity because they can survive on just eating Taco Bell or whatever. Or you go to the other extreme, which is the guys who have been there, done it, and been in the industry for 20 years, and now he's saying, I'm ready to do something interesting, exciting, challenging just for equity. I don't need a big salary. I'm going to take just little money or even no money. But you try to convince the guy somewhere in the middle, you're not going to get the guy. Because he's going to say, okay, I make whatever, $150,000, I need $150,000, you can't afford to pay. Yeah.
You mentioned, excuse me, sorry. You mentioned that you're, sorry about that. The work culture at your company was transparent, so you were pretty transparent about what you were working on. if I have an idea, let's say, and I can't code, if I go ahead and hire someone, how can I build that trust level? How would I know for sure that, yeah, this guy who knows the code inside out and he knows the product is not going to go ahead and build another company?
Oh, you absolutely hire the guys that you trust, the initial.
But how did you end up doing that? Because you went to India and you had a couple people here.
No, so, the first hire, my VP of engineering was the guy who was my director of engineering in my previous startup. And you absolutely go with known people. I mean, the first 4 or 5 people in the company, you got to have total trustworthy people. And because even if you have someone who's like going to get excited one day and then going to walk away next day, that's going to actually really put a big setback on your own enthusiasm. So you want a team who's willing to go to the war, not going to give up. They're strong, trustworthy. If Google gives them an offer next day, they're going to reject the Google offer. My VP of engineering could have got like 3x the salary from Google, and they would hire him, but he would not go.
Got it. Cool.
So don't hire someone just because if you don't have that level of trust and confidence, because unless you're really lucky and it works out, but most likely it will not, because the talent situation in the valley is, if you got a really smart guy, he's got a massive market value out there.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for answering the 800-pound gorilla question. Here's another one for you. So I'm struck by the extreme confidence in the company, whether it's turning down the SMB going for a large customer, whether it's turning down the launch and iterate model. At every step, you seem to be having what I would call extreme confidence. But that, given your past company experience, has to come from some evidence you saw in your company that gave you the confidence that you were on the right path. What was that evidence? Was it a number of users, number of transactions, number of customers, a feature set? What was it that you saw in the 3 years that you tracked inside the company that gave you the confidence that you were on the right track?
So initially, in the first year, there was nothing, because we're still building the product, so there was not enough data to give you confidence that you're on the right track or not. But that was more about studying other markets. So what we did is that really studied Korea, which is South Korea is kind of the mother of all this gaming. It's like the probably 50% of the world's gaming happens there. The Korean guys are crazy. They spend crazy amount of money. So we studied that pattern, and it gave us a lot of confidence that we're on the right track, because this is exactly what is working there, and it's only a matter of time, not if but when, that this will happen. And so if we are building the right product, the market is there for us. And the biggest enemy between us and the market's success is really the having a high quality product. So let's not take any shortcuts, whether it is a customer who is going to waste our time, or whether it is just pre-releasing it fast enough just because we want to get to a revenue. And it's just a strong belief, because I had seen also other, so in my previous startup, I think I learned a lot of lessons of, actually we failed multiple times. And it's like almost the 7th time or something that we got the product right. Like the first 6 times, whatever we released, it was failing, it wasn't working. And that kind of pushed me to the other extreme, which is saying that I don't want this nightmares of pushing something and which is not the best, the top quality, and I'm going to live with all these problems, and then I may not be able to recover, because there are markets where you can fail and then you can recover fast, and that's fine. This is unfortunately is a sector which is a transaction system where there is no second time recovery. It means, once people lose trust in you, you're gone. So you don't get the second time. So I think in my case, it's a lot of past failures of doing the wrong things that actually pushed me on the other extreme. And today, even now, every release, I'll sit down with my VP of engineering, I'll sit down with my QA guys, and I'm like, unless you guys show me, I have 15 different things, I am not hitting the green, I'm not hitting the push button to let you release this, because I'm just paranoid about making sure that everything is buttoned up. Which, in some other industries, you can afford to, fail faster than recover.
Question? Yeah, hi. I was wondering, how do you, 2 things, how do you, you've been looks like a serial entrepreneur, balance your personal life with the amount of time each of your companies may have taken, whether failure or success. And second thing is, how do you protect your personal assets if something a company does and somebody sues you and your company?
So, how do you protect?
In this case, a payment system, and something goes wrong and people have a litigation, the company goes down. I mean, I guess you just take an MLC and protect the personal assets.
There's enough lawyers in the valley that I understand the question, but I don't think we would worry too much about it. I can worry a lot about it and not get enough sleep to work next day. It's a lot. Yeah, things can go wrong dramatically because there is a risk and liability involved when you're doing a money or a payment business. But I think there are enough structures, legal structures in place that protects the liability, and there's lots of terms of services and things like that. So. Well, the fact of the matter is that when you're doing a startup, you're expected to work like whatever 16, 18 hours a day and 7 days a week. That's given, and I think if you're, especially in this kind of a space, right, when you're starting, unless you're doing some, if you're doing a Web 2.0 type of company, which is super competitive because every time you come up with a new application, there's going to be like 5 other copycatters who are going to. By the way, we had 5 other companies at least who copied exactly the same product. Not the big companies, startups were formed. There's still, some of them are around, 3 of them died, right in their first year. So you're expected to work that crazy hours, but then you have to arrange your life around it. And I don't think it becomes a burden because if you have a strong conviction, you really love what you're doing, then somehow magically everything gets just organized. I don't think I've ever had to kind of really think about it. Wow, I'm working like so many hours, so how do I organize? And this whole work-life balance thing, I've never understood why people have books and seminars on work-life balance. I think it's an oxymoron because the fact that you say work-life balance, which means that, work is not life. So if work is not life, why are you working? That means work is dead. So you're supposed to be dead at work, and then you have to have a life outside of work to do the balance. So I've never understood that. I think I'm enjoying life while I'm at work, and then I have life with life. There's no separation. And really, the separation goes away. Right? Because even at home, because then what happens is because once something becomes your passion, with your wife and kids, even in the evening, you're talking about the same stuff, right? And you're enjoying that. I'm hoping they're enjoying too, but sometimes I think what happens is they get used to enjoying it. First few weeks, they are going to say, please, keep that at office, and I don't want to listen to this. But I think once it goes on, the human mind is such that if you are tortured or something, then at some point that torture you start loving it. So it becomes part of life.
So in your failed enterprises, how do you realize that you failed? At what point do you realize that you failed? And then what are the lessons which you learned from the failed enterprises were useful in your success?
So the only time a business goes out of business is when you run out of money. So you know that you're failed when you run out of money because you don't have the oxygen to pay or you don't have the money to pay the bill to your landlord next month for the rent. So you failed. But till that time, you don't declare failure. If you are really persistent about it, you keep going, keep going, keep going. And but when you're out of money, you're out of money. What can you do? So, but also at some point, if you know that this is not going somewhere nowadays, in the 10 years back, that was the way to do it. I think now there are people who would, even if you have like $5 million VC money in the bank, but if you know that you're in a space which is like you're not growing like a rocket ship, this is not going to be a growth business, and this is not going really anywhere. There are a lot of troubled companies like that. Sometimes I've seen now that the CEO is very honest and will say, let's fold this and let's give the money back, at least whatever is remaining in the bank, back to the VCs, and move on to something, do something interesting. But I think that's a very rational thing if that is really the situation. You've also seen sometimes people really persistent about it, which is a good thing too, and they somehow pivot the business into something else, which is a great thing. And the other thing is that, they really see that. So you got to make a decision at some point that, hey, you're going to keep going, and keep pivoting it to something, make something out of it, or this is not going to work, and give the money back. But there's no point in burning the money every month and you're not going anywhere. That is also foolishness, and there are some egomaniacs who would just keep running the business, thinking that there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and keep burning the cash. So you got to have that clarity.
One more question, then.
I have one question.
Anyway, by the way, wonderful.
Wonderful story, Karl. Karl, by the way, he was the winner of the Thai 50 in earlier, and after he joined Visa, he was very instrumental in getting Visa to come back and be a sponsor of TiCon. And I think you did an admirable job. So I have a question now for you. Now that you sold, okay, you got all the value, all the culture, great business you created. Visa loved you; they want you. Now, how are you now doing at Visa? I mean, are you really making a little impact on their mentality, so the guys don't quit at 5 o'clock to go to watch the baseball game or watch their favorite show on TV or whatever that is? Or how is it going?
I want to answer specific to that company. I might be under legal limits of what I can say and what I can't say, but I'll answer it in a general context of a small company guy now in a big company and then trying to make an impact. I'd say it's very difficult, right? Because big companies have the cultures for 50 years. You can try to make an impact within the team or the business unit that you are driving, but still there are so many different departments and groups and everything. So it's very difficult in a large company. And I think that's the best thing for people like you who are VCs, that look, big companies can't execute. That's why you can keep funding the small companies, and big companies will always have to buy small companies. So I'm super optimistic that I think that innovations will always happen from small companies. There will always be exits, and there will always be money to be made by entrepreneurs, big money to be made. And I would say never ever kind of get discouraged that some big company will roll into your space, or don't take that objection from investors that someone like big company will do these things. I think there's no reference to my employer, but I'm saying in general, large companies have a hard time. Let's look at Google, for example. They think that they're invincible. They got infinite resources. They actually use that word, that they got infinite resources. You got a failure after failure in terms of the Google buzz and the Google wave, and look at all those things. Anyway, if they wanted to be relevant in a social networking space, which this is the company that owns the internet, can't innovate. They would have to buy Facebook. They couldn't even buy that. Look at the offer space. It just happened right in front of under their nose. Can't be successful there. They try to buy Groupon. They can't buy that. So a company that is synonymous with innovation and just talks and brags about the innovation, can't really innovate it. When they have billions of dollars, they got the best engineers in the world. So, I ask that question, why isn't Google innovating that fast enough? No, they brag about their Android success, but Android's really giving away for free, compared to the Windows 7 or something. If they would have priced it at Windows 7, there wouldn't be even Android success, So not too much bashing on Google, but just giving you an example that I think this whole mindset that big companies can innovate, they have become big, and they have some other innovations, but they can't really get into a new space fast enough. Like Google couldn't get into social networking space fast enough. They're failing even now. Google couldn't get into an offer space fast enough. They're failing even now. So any new space or any new category or any new product segment that opens up that big company doesn't have, and if you're against this David versus Goliath classic battle, the small company is going to win.
One more question?
Great presentation, Karl. So one question I have is, you talked about the culture and how a startup person in a big company culture is difficult to change. So after a while, the startup guy gets bored and wants to get out. So what's the time duration that we need to keep an eye on you that you'll be getting out of?
Yeah, and generally most deals, I think, the big companies generally do a 12-month to 18-month lock-in, which is a standard in the deals. I don't think they can do, there might be longer, but that's what the general number is. And they expect, actually, you know, the big companies know that, you know, they're buying the talent, they're buying the company, they're buying the technology, but they know that some of the good people is going to move on in 12 to 18 months because they can't survive in a big company where things are happening so slowly. So I think there is an enough transition plan and things like that. Big companies are good at planning. They do planning. So they have a very solid transition plan in place.
Okay, last question.
What's your next venture, Karl?
No, I think there's a ton of ideas. I think we're living in a really exciting time because it's just even the number of entrepreneurs like been saying. I'm not even a VC or that well known, but the amount of deals that I get in my inbox, I'm like amazed at I'm like I feel very happy that, you know, there's so much entrepreneurial energy and optimism about people quitting their jobs and starting new businesses. So that is great. And second thing is that, you know, we are in an interesting time where there's a ton of ideas. I mean, think about this coupon idea, right? I mean, coupons have been around for like 20 years, and Groupon is like the fastest company to hit to, you know, $500 million revenue and the speed at which they're growing the revenues. So imagine the type of ideas that are still unexplored and are not exploited. So the amount of ideas that are there to build billion-dollar businesses or hundreds of millions of dollars of exit are out there, and I think it's going to be interesting next few years. I think we are going to remain in this very tale of two cities kind of, you know, the dichotomy of two different sides. You have the rest of the economy, which is still kind of thinking about the double-dip recession and all this stuff, and unemployment at 9.1%, all that stuff. But then you have the other side, which is like the technology, which is like hot, where, you know, the Facebooks and the Groupons and the Zyngas of the world, they will continue to thrive, and there will be like 15 other companies like them. They'll keep coming. So I think we are very fortunate to be A, in Silicon Valley, in the right place, B, you know, in the technology sector, which I think will continue to boom. But it may have some drag on the rest of the things.
Okay. Okay. Any aspiration from your management team to board the
Don't get him into trouble. So, by the way, all those deals which are coming in your inbox, send them to high angels. Second is, any last, okay, I have a question. So any trends or anything you want to talk about to the aspiring entrepreneurs in the group?
I think one thing that I'm looking at very seriously is clean tech. I mean, I just invested in a company in solar energy, which is a fabulous idea. I mean, so, you know, this is an idea, I'll tell you in 2 minutes, but I really fell in love with it because they are really addressing the bottom of the pyramid, the poor people who don't have electricity, so in developing markets or poor countries, Africa, even in India. And what they've built is a portable solar system that you know, you can go into slums. So our first 5 customers are actually people who live in slums in Bangalore, and they don't have electricity, and they're not going to have electricity because the grid's not going to reach there. Right? And these are the people who are paying the highest price of electricity than people like you and me because they use kerosene. So they do 10 hours of labor work because they're laborers. Then they have to stand 2 hours in a line to buy the kerosene, and then they bring it at home, and it is also bad for the environment because you're burning kerosene. And the kerosene cost is obviously much higher on a per kilowatt basis than what we pay for energy. So this is like build a portable solar system. It's we call distributed solar. You put it, plug in there. We don't even charge for the upfront equipment because obviously they don't have the money. So we use the cell phone model of giving the equipment for free to them. And then we have a prepaid card. So, you know, whatever little money that they are earning from their labor work, they can buy that much kilowatt, and at least it runs their, you know, currently it's good enough to run, you know, lights and fan, so they can get light and fan. And these people have started, like, you know, tasting electricity. I mean, can you imagine that, you know, like electricity is a new thing for them, and they're so happy that they have light and fan running on it. You know what the next thing those guys are asking, which is just like, you know, very, very, you feel extremely emotional about it because they're saying, can we get now some more electricity to have TV in our house? It's like, yeah, sure, you know. So I think, and you know, so the numbers were unbelievable. There's like 2 billion people on the planet who don't have electricity. 2 billion people. So that's unbelievable. That's a huge market. Now, these people, they don't have electricity because A, you know, they are living in remote areas. B, they're living in slums. So, you know, the big electric utilities don't see them as consumers. So, and obviously the cost of building the infrastructure to run the grids to that slum area is massive. So the only way these guys are going to get electricity is through something distributed portable thing. And the distributed portable thing and with clean energy is solar. So I was very impressed with these 3 people actually out of Canada who built this portable system. And then they wanted to deploy it in Africa. And I said, look, you know, I'll help you because I understand India. I want you to take first India as a customer base. And I'll get you your first 10 customers, which is very easy. So walk into the slums, but you know it is super fulfilling. Like every new one customer that we put light in their house, you know, there is a light that turns on in your heart. That wow, you know, that's a great work. So, but I think there is a huge demand in energy and clean tech.
That's a great story, Karl. So Karl is going to be here for next 15-20 minutes more. Or as long as he wants to stay. So we appreciate your sharing your story today. And with that, we'll close the formal session